Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the GRP. Back at it on a Thursday. Time to get in on this UFC 308 preview because this weekend we got a banger. UFC 308 in Abu Dhabi. It's going to be a daytime card, but man, I'm excited for these fights. I feel like they're going to be some good ones. I know I've said that before and it hasn't come through, and I hope I'm not jinxing it by saying it, but damn, I am ready and excited to watch these fights this weekend. So we got to get ready for it. So we got to talk all about it and, get a little preview going and talk about what happened last weekend as well with the UFC Vegas 99 card. Had some PFL action last weekend too. Francis Ngannou coming out big. And then what else? We got some street beef going on. Diaz and Brendan Schaub going at it on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. So, yeah, we got some stuff to talk about, but for me this week, I'm just here getting through another week, just trying to feel motivated and creative. It's tough sometimes, and get through work, and you just don't feel motivated to be creative. You got I want to let my brain rest after working all day, but then I got to jump back into prep. I got to try to come up with content. It's like, fuck. But I just keep going because it's what I like to do. I come through these waves of motivation for being creative and stuff. And I mean, it's rough, but I try my best to just keep it going. When it's easier when there's actually things going on. I feel a little better about doing the show when there's actual things going on and stuff to talk about. And we got a little bit of that this week, especially with this UFC card coming up this weekend. So I'm definitely excited for that. Definitely got to give a shout out to my sponsor, Noctane smelling salts. There we go. Always got to get it to focus in there. But yeah, I use it all the time. I love these things. Got to get me a new bottle soon, but definitely love using these. Good pick me up, good wake up. You just take a quick little whiff of it after you shake it up a little bit and you feel nice afterwards. It's a little jolting at first, but it's fun to do. Ooh. Oh, my left eye always gets watery. But ooh, yeah. The red cap, it's the strongest one. They do a cap system, colored caps. The black is the mid-range. Infinity just found out how strong the middle one is. He just ordered a bottle and got it in recently, and he tried it out last night on the Technically Unsound podcast, and he was having a little trouble. But it was funny. He's in the chat now. It was funny, but it's cool to see someone else try it, and he hadn't tried it even though he's been here, and we were trying to get him to try it on the watch party one night, and he didn't want to, but now he knows. I wonder if he found out. Infinity, did you find out completely? Have you opened the bottle? Have you taken a whiff? You got to be slow and careful at first, because when you first pop these things open, they're pretty strong. Anyway, they have a white cap that's the least potent, and you can get that if you're a little worried about it hitting too hard, but they're fun. They're good. When I'm driving out of town, traveling, and you get tired behind the wheel, that's what I do. Powerlifters do it for rush of adrenaline before they lift. All kinds of people use it for different reasons. There's different uses for all of it, but they're fun. And they're good. They're helpful. They're useful. I use them all the time. I love them. So thanks, Noctane, for the sponsorship. And they have a good product too. So go check it out. Hit that QR code. Order yourself some, see what the hype is about, but be careful and ease into it. But I promise you won't regret it. So check it out. Follow that QR code. Their website's cool too. Very eye-appealing, very informative, and pretty easy to navigate. So check that out. Thanks again, Noctane. Appreciate it. So besides that, I almost forgot to do the little sponsorship thing last week. I had to do it at the end because I completely spaced it. My mic cable, I got, not mic cable, but my headphones. Look at how long this damn thing is. So I got these new headphones, recently for my birthday. and you could see the whole cord, but it is so damn long. I could just like rope something with this shit. It's crazy. My other one was just, normal size. This one, I don't know what to do with it because I don't want to roll over it with my chair and I get it caught up in my legs. I'm like, what the hell do I do with all this? I think I need to pull some wire back into my mic arm. I have an extender already because my headphones plug in way over here. Actually, I guess I can do a little, yeah. So my headphones plug in way over here on this thing, the Rodecaster. So I have to have an extension, and my extension comes out, and with this cable being this long, my extender needs to be back a little further so I don't have to, fight with this cord. But I like the headphones. Oh damn, I didn't turn it on. Whoops, I forgot to turn on the other camera. That's okay. Don't need it right now. I was just gonna say, like the headphones, they're nice, and continuing to use them, getting more and more used to them. They don't have. It sounds so natural. So that's the thing. My other ones, they were a little loud no matter what I did. So hearing myself was like not normal. I got used to that a little bit. So now wearing these, it's just like if I'm talking out loud. So it's a little different. So I'm a little needs to get used to a little bit, but I like them a lot. They're so much more comfortable, man. They just sit. So if you're looking for a good pair of over the ear headphones that you need to monitor something with or just use, these are nice. They're wired though. But they're nice. Made by Rode. Anyway, enough of that. Just appreciating my birthday gifts, I guess. And my phone is nonstop. I don't know what the hell's going on. Hopefully nothing. Okay. But yeah, so we got a lot to get into this week. This UFC 308 card. The more and more stuff I see about this card, the more and more I get excited for it. Max Holloway is one of those guys that I like watching fight no matter what. And Ilia Topuria has proven to be a great fighter. Obviously, he won the belt. He's now the champ, but he's got a mouth on him. And some of it's kind of cringe because he kind of has this, it's like he's trying to be along the lines of Conor. And, a lot of people got annoyed with Conor, including me, with some of the outlandish shit, but he had the star power and it was tough to ignore it. Ilia is a very good fighter. I just don't know that he has that kind of appeal, maybe where he's from, but I don't know if he has that appeal overall. So that's something that I'm struggling with him. And then just some of the disrespect. I know some of these guys got to take that avenue to get a little more recognition or just to be noticed a little more. They think they got to talk more, and sometimes it just doesn't land. It doesn't land. And some of it's just cringy, and you just want to tell them to shut the fuck up and just prove it. You know what I mean? But the press conference happened like overnight last night because the fight's happening in Abu Dhabi, so time difference and all that. I wake up to all these notifications and stuff about what happened during the press conference, and I'm just listening to Topuria, and I'm just like, oh, okay, I've had enough of this. And I tried to listen to the whole press conference a little bit earlier, and it was just like, I don't know, man. It's hard to deal with, and Max is usually a funny guy, and he doesn't talk a lot of shit unless he has to, but he kept saying, we'll see. I guess we'll see. We'll see. We'll have to wait and see. So even Topuria kind of picked up on that and was just started making fun of him a little bit. But I think Max just like doesn't want to talk about it and just wants to be about it. And I respect that. But at the press conference, I guess you got to talk it up a little bit. So a lot of, that was a hard S. Sorry. A lot of the headlines and stuff was just kind of talking shit about the fact that Max, they're like, what did we learn from the press conference? I guess we'll have to see. That was the headline. So unfortunately, not a whole lot to talk about with the press conference, but it did happen, and the face-off's a little intense. So, but nothing crazy, and it is what it is. Well, I'm hoping that means that it just means that the fights are going to be that much more intense and crazy and fun. So yeah, I think that's about it. Let's I mentioned the Technically Unsound podcast. That's the other podcast I'm on if you want to hear me talk about anything other than MMA, which we still touch on that here and there because, you know, I promote my podcast on there as well because the guys are very supportive. Infinity in the chat right now is part of that podcast. We go live every Wednesday. Just go to technicallyunsound.com. It'll take you straight to our YouTube page and go subscribe over there and check it out. It's not for everybody, but I think it's funny, and we play a lot of different kind of interesting games. We taste test different drinks. We talk about gear, tech talk, all kinds of stuff. You know, current events, news, all that stuff. So go check it out. Technically Unsound. And yeah, subscribe, like, all that good stuff. Don't forget to do that for my channel here as well. You can follow all my social media. It's going on down there. Posted a TikTok today. Finally, I hadn't done it in a while. I think I got a little bit discouraged because things just weren't working out with some of the stuff I was posting here and there. So it just gets to the point, like, it takes so much time, and then when it doesn't work out in the end, it sucks. But no big deal. I just keep going, and I gotta get those creative juices flowing again and post some more stuff. And I need to make some changes here and there. I've been trying to slowly make changes to you know, the podcast setup right now with the way that, you know, you see things visually and stuff like that. I guess I get a little bored here and there. So I try to change little things up just to make things different. So you'll see a little bit of those changes if you haven't been here in a minute, or if you weren't paying attention over the past couple weeks. Either way, it's fun. It's cool. Look out for the small, subtle changes. And yeah, other than that, let's get to combat sports news. And we'll start off with that Francis Ngannou win that happened last weekend. Francis Ngannou versus Renan Ferreira. Battle of the Giants in the PFL. It's their super fights division. They did a pay-per-view. A lot of backlash on that pay-per-view because the fights were good. Like, good. I mean, you have to have that weird sound in your voice when you say that, because it's like kind of good but not really good. Who knows? But to pay for it, I'm not sure it was worth it. I watched some of it as I could because I just bumped into some ways to watch it. I guess you could say. We all know. Sometimes you just find ways. You know, you bump into somebody that shows you the fight. I don't know. It happens. I mean, maybe I didn't do that. Allegedly, I did, but anyway, I did watch the Francis fight, and you know, the highlights are all over the place too and stuff like that. So it was a decent fight. It was a decent fight. And then Chris Cyborg was fighting Larissa Pacheco, who was the current PFL champ for the women's division, and Cyborg was making her debut since the Bellator moved over to PFL. And yeah, she got a big win there too. We'll touch on that here in a minute. I want to see the other fights on the main card. Johnny Eblen versus Fabian Edwards. Fabian Edwards is Leon Edwards' brother, former UFC welterweight champ. Leon Edwards, his brother's fighting for a championship against Johnny Eblen and wound up losing by unanimous decision. I think that's the problem with this card too. Just like any other MMA card, lots of decisions means not a lot of action sometimes. So we had there was 9 fights total on the pay-per-view. The main event was a finish. And then you had 2 other finishes besides that, which were submissions. So a lot of people do not like the ground game being the totality of the fights that happen. If that's what's happening during the fight, is a lot of ground game stuff. If you don't understand it, or you don't have, you know, I guess if you don't have the interest in seeing nothing but ground game, it doesn't appeal. So unfortunately, You get 2 submissions and a bunch of decisions and 1 KO. Actually, it wasn't a TKO. It was a full-on knockout by Francis Ngannou. So Johnny Eblen wins by unanimous decision. That was a title fight against Fabian Edwards in the middleweight division. Let's see. Paul Hughes beats AJ McKee. That was an upset. A lot of people thought that McKee was going to kind of rush through him, and but the ones that knew were high on Paul Hughes and, you know, thought for sure he would be able to get that win, and he did. That was a split decision win in the lightweight division. Rufián Stotts beats Marcos Breno by submission in the 3rd round, the bantamweight division there. And honestly, that's really all anybody would know out of these fighters. I hate to say it. No disrespect to them. It's just they're not the biggest names. You really gotta. Oh man, I'm gonna have to turn off this vibration on my phone. It's killing me right now. But it's definitely no disrespect to them. It's just not well known, not well promoted. And Don Davis is the owner of PFL. He talks a lot of shit. He thinks he's, you know, Dana White 2.0 when he's really Dana White minus 2.0. He's just not good at it. He talks about how he doesn't even pay attention to MMA or anything unless it's his event. Doesn't watch any of it, doesn't pay attention to any of it. He probably doesn't know half the fighters I don't know on this card. So it didn't sit well with the fans. You know, he's talking about how he doesn't even watch MMA or pay for it or anything like that. But yet he's asking people to pay for a lackluster card. Yes, Francis Ngannou is a big fight. Chris Cyborg is usually a big fight. But, you know, and Johnny Eblen is brings eyes, but not a lot. Not enough because of the promotion, I think. So that's some of the biggest problems with the PFL. That was the biggest problem with Bellator as well. Bellator just promotion-wise sucks. You never know when the fights are happening. You don't know what the hell's going on. So it's a pain in the ass. And it's just hard to keep up with it. The UFC maybe oversaturates everything, but they put out good content, and that's what you need when you have a big organization like that and you go mainstream and you are trying to bring in the money, bring in the eyes. And when you're the biggest organization out there, and some people don't even say, oh, you do MMA. They say you do UFC because UFC is MMA. So people don't even know the difference because the brand has been brought up. You know, it's had its hard times, but it's been brought up and well done with promotion and everything else. So the PFL has a lot to learn about that, and they're number 2 in the MMA business right now, but it's a very distant number 2, and one championship maybe is there with them, but it's just not as appealing as the UFC. So it's tough to get in there and be overly competitive with the UFC. So if they go head to head on a pay-per-view, the UFC pay-per-view might cost double the amount that the PFL one did, but it's more worth it most of the time, and you can at least feel like you are spending your money on something you are going to want to watch. So, and don't get me wrong, the UFC has bunk fights sometimes too, and the card doesn't feel like it was worth it. I feel like it's overpriced because the price just keeps going up and up. That's what everybody's doing now, though, price gouging. They're like, oh, we're gonna up it $5 here, and 6 months later we'll up it another $5, and then we'll wait a year, and then we'll up it again, and then we'll up it again in like 8 months. It's like, stop. $5 after 5 doesn't sound like much, but you go $5. Next thing you know, you're paying $80 when you're used to paying fucking $49.99 back in the day, and $40, even $39.99 at some points. But I guess that's the price you pay. I don't know. Inflation, stupid bullshit, who knows? Either way, it's expensive as hell to be a fan and watch everything. And then you take chances when you are illegally streaming or watching it on other areas that you can find it. You got to deal with buffering, you got to deal with streams going down, you got to deal with people getting shut down on social media pages and stuff like that. So it's tough. You want to watch the fight you know, uninterrupted and a clear, good HD stream. You can't do it if you're doing all that. It's very hard to find streams that are going to be good. Believe me, I tried in the past. That's why I don't do it anymore. It's just like, if the UFC's on, they get my money. Unfortunately, whether I like it or not, or anybody else does, that's the way it's got to go, because I rely on watching those fights, and especially the pay-per-views. But enough about that. I don't know why I got into that rant, but so yeah, here was the face-off that happened the day before, after the, you know, during their like weigh-ins or whatever. And according to Francis Ngannou's coach, this is kind of what set him off, because there was some uncertainty going on with Francis, because if you don't know the backstory, he lost a child after he got knocked out by Anthony Joshua. You know, you get knocked out that bad in a boxing match, and that's enough to deal with and handle. But then you have a life-altering, you know, incident that happens where you lose a child, of all things. You know, it's hard enough to lose just a loved one in general, but a small child that hasn't even begun its life really, and to lose a child like that, I couldn't even imagine. So Francis was dealing with that, and everyone was surprised that he was gonna actually make it to this fight. This fight was already in the works when all that happened, but he made it. And according to his coach and people close to him, he was having a rough time. He was breaking down a lot. He kept saying he didn't even know why he was doing this. Like, you know, they weren't even sure if he was gonna fight, and he made it, and he pushed through. And big ups to him for that, because that is a tough thing to overcome, and I feel for him 100%. Like, I couldn't even imagine going through anything like that. But apparently Renan Ferreira, you know, puts his head on the forehead of Francis and pushes a button that wakes him up. And apparently he was an animal that got awoken from a nap. You know, that's what his coach said, and he was a different person when he walked away from this face-off, and he was ready to go, and he showed it and proved it in the fight, because he came out ready to go, swinging, you know, and he goes for a takedown, of all things. Like, that's not something we're used to seeing with Francis. We saw it once in the UFC where he actually initiated a takedown out of nowhere, but Renan Ferreira was, you know, landing some good leg kicks on him, and Ferreira's a big boy, so he's got some power behind his hands and his kicks, and he's really, really good with those leg kicks. So he's landing these leg kicks on Francis, and Francis didn't want any more of it, or maybe he just knew that, hey, those are gonna add up. I need to stop this now. And instead of taking the chance of getting caught by a shot, by, you know, rushing in and trying to trade with Ferreira, he decided to take him down, and he did that successfully, and he looked good on the ground. You know, he got into some good positions, and he got the finish by ground and pound, and we're talking thunderous ground and pound. So I'm actually gonna play that right now. So here's the finish, and I'm just listen to the shots to the head of Renan Ferreira by Francis Ngannou. It's insane. And actually, I just realized something, so let me fix that real quick, because I want to make sure that this works correctly. But yeah, there was a someone sitting cage side that caught a very close-up view of the knockout, and it was just crazy. The way that the way that you hear the punches land on the head of Ferreira is unreal, and it's you know, it just makes you wonder, like, how he felt after that. So let me just make sure I get this all correct, because this is the one thing I screwed up on and forgot that I was going to be playing sound with this. Okay, there we go. All right, so here's the finish real quick. Francis Ngannou knocking out Renan Ferreira. God, those shots. Just one after another in the same spot. There he goes limp. He gets one more in there. Wow. Just insane, and he's overwhelmed. He tells his coach, if you saw there, he put his hand up to his coach when his coach ran up behind him and started to hug him. He's like, hey, give me a second. And he talked about that because, yeah, let's just listen one more time. Let's listen real quick. Oh, so crazy. Those shots are just crazy. And there he is, flattened out cold. And, you know, there's Francis's coach behind him. Francis just paying his respects. Like, he couldn't even get up at first because he's just overwhelmed and overcome with emotions. He cried multiple times. You know, you could see it in him. He was taking deep breaths, just like, I think he was just relieved. He took it out on Renan Ferreira for sure. And Ferreira wound up with a gigantic bulge on the top of his head where he was taking all those shots, because Francis just kept going, as you saw, with that same shot over and over and over again. And it was brutal. And you could see that big bump on Renan's head. And it turns out that he had just a big bump even on the inside of his head. They showed the x-ray. They posted the x-ray, and you could just see the gigantic bulge in the inside of his head too. So he's gonna have some time. He's gonna need some time to recover from that, because those are some gigantic shots to his head and not good for him. But lots of respect between Ferreira and Francis. You know, Francis kind of sat there next to him, you know, for a little bit, and then you see him get up and he burst into tears with all of his team next to him, comforting him. And, you know, I think it just all came to a head, and after releasing it violently, then he released it emotionally. And I don't blame the guy. It was a tough time for him, and just to go through all that and to be able to just give it a release the way he did. I mean, it sucks for Ferreira, but it was good for Ngannou. And so now he's the new PFL champion for the super fight division, or the heavyweight super fight. I don't even know what they're calling it. I don't know if it's the regular heavyweight division. I don't know what it is, but he's the champ. So back to the gold belt being wrapped around him once again, like he did in the UFC. And yeah, I mean, Dana White, only thing Dana White had to say was, you know, he talked about the fact that, you know, he's not surprised that he became the champ. Because he knows what talent he has and stuff. But he went on this weird rant talking about how basically, you know, if he would have lost, he lost two. If he would have lost two in a row, or he did, I don't remember what the hell he was saying. But basically, he was ready to cut Francis. Even though it sounds weird, because he was a star. You know, he was enough of a star in his division, and he was dominating. He was fun to watch. Everyone was high on him, and you know, Dana comes out and says something like, I was going to cut him, but somebody here in the company begged me not to, so I didn't. It's just weird. It's probably just because of the way their relationship kind of all ended, the way things were happening. He had issues with the pay and stuff like that, so Dana probably didn't want to deal with it. Regardless of how big you are, unless you're Conor McGregor level or John Jones level, Dana's not going to put up with that. So it is what it is, and that's about it for Ngannou versus Ferreira, because there's not much more to talk about. You saw the shots. My music stopped. I forgot to loop it. It's okay. He took the shots. He got knocked out, and Francis becomes a champ. So, and then we move on to the other championship fight on the card: Chris Cyborg versus Larissa Pacheco. Larissa Pacheco is the only person to beat Kayla Harrison in MMA, and yeah, she beat her for the belt, and that's when Kayla took some time off and then winds up in the UFC after. So Pacheco has a lot of hype behind her because of that, and you know, they were trying to see if they could get Cyborg over to the PFL in time to get Kayla Harrison to fight her, because of course that's a highly anticipated fight, being that Kayla's in her division, and it would have been an exciting fight. So and Pacheco definitely gave Cyborg a fight, even though she wound up losing. She did give her a good fight, and she actually busted open Cyborg in 2 different places, big gashes under one eye and over the other. I actually have some pictures of that in a minute, but yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for lack of trying, but Cyborg just came out on top, and there wasn't much that Pacheco could do about that. There's a big shot from her right there, and then you see some damage on Cyborg. Look at her eyes. You know, she's bloodied up, she's opened up. Those gashes were pretty big that you could see at some point in time. So, you know, Cyborg came out and did what she does. She landed heavy hands. She put on the pressure, and she did what she's always done, which is enough to win. And you know, she did not get the finish, but it was a unanimous decision win for her. So she did plenty to get all the judges in her favor and win the belt. There's some more big punches from Cyborg, just what we expect from her, because she's a good striker and she's got a lot of power in those hands. And she winds up winning the belt. You can see one eye's pretty swollen, the other eye has that big gash over it. So definitely didn't come out unscathed, but she got the win regardless, gets the belt. She's the new champ. And now all Don Davis can talk about is how I got Cyborg, finally got Cyborg over here, and Kayla runs to the UFC. And, you know, just talking shit. Kayla's already addressed it and was like, you know, it is what it is. I came to where the good competition is. Don Davis seems to think that there is no good competition for her in the UFC unless Amanda Nunes comes back. He said that Pacheco's, you know, fights have been bigger than, or the fights that he could have gave Kayla, which would have been Pacheco again and then Cyborg, that those 2 fights would have been way bigger than the 2 fights that she's already had in the UFC, which Holly Holm and Caitlin Vieira, I mean, maybe not the biggest names. Holly Holm was a big name at one point, former champion. You can't downplay that. And Caitlin Vieira is a heavy hitter, and she actually is the first one to really draw some blood from Kayla Harrison, and she gave Kayla Harrison a good fight. So I don't know, Don Davis is just kind of an idiot. He's just out of touch and overly confident about what he says, and he's not even good at saying it. So I don't like the guy. He's fucking annoying. I mean, anybody that dislikes Dana White, this guy would just annoy the shit out of you, because he's kind of a nerd. He doesn't look the part and he doesn't talk the part. So he just needs to fucking, I don't know, stop being so full of shit. Just focus on the promotion, focus on the organization and getting more eyes on it. That's what he should be focusing on. But he's gonna do his thing, and it's just gonna continue that way until there's a big change made. I don't know if we'll ever see that though. So that was the PFL. That was the other big fight happening this past weekend. And then we had some Twitter beef / social media beef going on between Nate Diaz and Brendan Schaub. So Nate Diaz, we all know, you know, considers himself a gangster. You know, I'm a big fan of Nate Diaz. Sometimes maybe he talks a big game and doesn't follow through with some things. I can understand why people think that or say that. Sometimes I think he's become a little more business minded and realizes that he can't just play the little immature gangster part sometimes, and it's probably better for his career if he doesn't. But sometimes he's off on the things that he says, and this time I feel like maybe it was just bad timing. Maybe it was a bad topic to touch on and a bad topic to comment on. But him and Schaub have had problems in the past. Nothing crazy, but when Conor McGregor was fighting Floyd Mayweather, Nate Diaz is almost as unintelligible as you are, bro. That's funny. Well, I mean, I've got you roped in, Rick Allen. So how unintelligible are you? You can type the big words, but can you say them? Probably not. But there's been beef in the past, and you know, nothing came of it. It was just an exchange of words. that was about it backstage during that McGregor Mayweather fight. But this time, Brendan Schaub was talking about the lawsuit that's happening against the UFC, and he was talking about one of his really good friends and one of the guys that brought him up in MMA and trained him, and he was training partners with him. That's Shane Carwin, and he's telling the story that Shane Carwin talked about during his statement about the lawsuit and how it would help him. Gonna slap that Astros hat right off your head. Oh man, unintelligible. That was your word, and you just proved to yourself that. So anyway, so Brendan was getting emotional and shed a tear or two about the state of Shane Carwin and what he had mentioned with the CTE and barely being able to tie his shoes, like can't stand up on his own, needs help with certain things because he just has bad days. So he's just getting emotional and speaking from the heart about his friend. And Nate Diaz decided to call him a big old pussy. He said, Brendan, the big old pussy Schaub. Which is, I mean, it's funny, but at the same time, it's kind of like, dude, he's like talking about his friend, and his friend being in a bad way, and you just want to go bad on him. So that was kind of fucked up. And Brendan just responded with, oh buddy, I probably got 20 pounds on you, so not too far off. I'll snap your neck, set up a grappling match, and let me know how it goes for you. Have one of your handlers read this tweet and get back to me. Good response. I mean, I don't know about only having 20 pounds. Brendan Schaub was a heavyweight when he was fighting in the UFC. He was in the top 10 for a little while, so he's no stranger to fighting, but people just know him now as a podcaster / somewhat failed comedian, according to a lot of his haters and a lot of comedians even. So I guess I understand. He kind of quit doing comedy now and says it was because he is focusing on his kids, which is admirable. I get it, and maybe it's a cop out for getting out of what he knows is a failed attempt at comedy or whatever, but either way, he still puts out good content and he has insight into the game. So I still watch his content. I don't agree with a lot of it, but it is what it is. So now him and Nate Diaz got beef, and he went on about a 15-minute rant on his Schaub Show podcast, talking shit to Nate Diaz. And this is some of the shit he had to say. I'll read most of it. I don't expect Rick Ellen to be able to read at all, but he said, I retired 15 years ago, man. That being said, that's social media. This isn't real because here's what's real. I will fuck you up. That's real. I'm not asking for this. I don't want to fuck him up. I'm not trying to fuck him up. End of the day, if he walked in here right now, only one of us is going to walk out unscathed, and it's me. Every fucking day of the week, 365 days a year, I will snap his fucking neck. Now, if you're doing this because you fancy yourself some fisticuffs, if you fancy yourself and you want to actually grapple me, I'm not hard to get a hold of. Pull the fuck up and you can show up with all your boys, do all that stuff. But what a real man will do is pull up one-on-one. I don't have a posse. I don't need one, bud. I hate when people say bud. It's so annoying. He's like, I'll drop my kid off at fucking practice, roll over, twist your fucking neck off, and pick him up just in time unscathed with a Diet Coke. And that's how this goes for you for the rest of your fucking life, bud. And then he tops it off by saying, what are you gonna do, Nate? What are you gonna do? You're going to volume punch me, motherfucker? That's what you're going to do? What are you gonna do? Out grapple me? In what fucking sense? What world are you living in? This is the real world. Because Schaub says, well, I'm a black belt. He's done jiu-jitsu for so long. He's a high-level jiu-jitsu guy. Doesn't seem to be practicing it as much these days, but Nick Diaz is a black belt as well. So yeah, this is tough because Schaub went on this whole rant. He got pretty into it. He got pretty heated. If you want to go and watch it, you can check it out on YouTube on his channel. Again, it's about 15 minutes long. He just kept going. This is just some of what he said. And I mean, I don't know. I don't know if Diaz will do anything. I don't know if they'll try to set up a grappling match. And if they do, I think Diaz will try to get at him before that even comes to fruition. But he did have a comeback, and all Diaz had to say was, I think you'd be surprised. Which, don't get me wrong. I mean, I don't really have a dog in this fight, but that's a pretty good fucking comeback. Because if you know kind of the background of Schaub when he was losing fights at the end there, getting knocked out by Travis Brown, you know, Rogan famously had him on his show and kind of talked him out of fighting and told him, hey, you got other things going on, you can do that. And he said he didn't think that he could hang with the highest level grapplers like Cain Velasquez at the moment. And Schaub said, I think you'd be surprised. That was like the famous quote that everyone kind of laughed at and was like, oh shit. And then he quit MMA after that. So, you know, for Diaz to come back using his own words against him was pretty funny, and pretty clever. So, gossip monger, huh? Okay. Yeah, whatever. The chat, it is what it is. So that's Nate Diaz's comeback. So nothing else has been said as far as I know. Schaub has talked about it on all of his podcasts. People have asked him about it. He's had all the same shit to say, really, for the most part. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what comes of this. If anything, it'll probably blow over. Nothing will ever come of it. Schaub will talk about how, of course, he didn't do anything. Diaz will just call him a pussy again or something. And that'll be it. Unless they see each other out somewhere, and then I guess we'll find out. But that's it for that. I'll stop being a gossip monger, according to Rick Allen. I think Rick Allen's a clout chaser. He just likes to be acknowledged. So I don't know why I entertain it, but it is what it is. I don't care. Let's move on to last week's UFC Vegas 98. If my stream deck will work. There we go. Anthony Hernandez versus Michel Pereira. This happened last weekend on Saturday in the Apex. And there were some decent fights on this card. I mean, for the most part, nothing too crazy. A lot of decisions. I'm talking, there was, holy fucking shit, I did not even realize this. 2 finishes out of the 11 fights. 2 finishes. That's tough. And I kind of thought the week before this was a little bit lackluster. This one was a little more. And you had Austin Lane versus Rubeles Despaigne to start off the night. And I mean, they went back and forth. It wasn't a horrible fight. And I really thought Despaigne was gonna just put Austin Lane away. I was hoping for that KO because Austin Lane had been KO'd like 3 times in a row, twice in a row before this. So he was on a 2-fight losing streak, getting knocked out both times. And Despaigne was that guy that everyone talked about, how much of a heavy hitter he was, and how, you know, he's gonna just disperse of Austin Lane, and that didn't happen. So Austin Lane gets a unanimous decision there in the heavyweight division. Melissa Martinez gets a unanimous decision win over Ellis Ardeline in the strawweight division for the women. Another women's fight. There's 3 women's fight in a row, so I guess we can't be too surprised. But one of the 2 finishes came from these women, but not this one. It was Elise Reed versus Jessica Penne. Unanimous decision there for Elise Reed in the strawweight division. And then at the 139 catch weight, we had Jocelyn Edwards versus Tamires Vidal. Jocelyn Edwards getting the best of Vidal in this one. Finishes it with a submission by face crank. So she, you know, got this little spinning back fist on her, was able to tie her up and throw her to the ground, and then locks up the submission here with this face crank. I mean, it was kind of a rear naked, but at the same time, you know, she had it above the chin, but was able to squeeze tight enough to get her to tap. and she gets a submission win in the third round of that fight. Then Brad Katona gets a loss. He's the 2-time Ultimate Fighter winner. Unanimous decision loss to Jean Matsumoto. Asu Almabayev versus Mateus Nicolau. That was another unanimous decision win there for Almabayev. And then you had Darren Elkins versus Daniel Pineda. Another unanimous decision win. You're going to hear that over and over again here. We only have a few more. But yeah, lots of decisions. Darren Elkins winds up, after almost getting choked out here, took some damage like he always does to match his tattoo. His tattoo on his chest says the damage, and it does not look great. But yeah, he suffers a lot of damage every time he fights. He gets hit no matter what, and he bleeds and gets opened up. And so with that being said, you know, you're always wondering if he's going to be able to survive, but he does have a lot of heart, and he's, you know, too tough for his own good sometimes. So he gets caught up in this choke here, but he was able to turn it around, and you can see the damage here on his face, but he was able to turn it around on Pineda and wind up with the unanimous decision win on that one. And then moving on to the bantamweight division for the men, we had Cameron Smotherman versus Jake Hadley, and a lot of people seem to be high on Jake Hadley, but Smotherman was able to come in a last minute replacement because Hadley was supposed to fight Brady Highstand, and I guess Highstand got injured or something and had to. Cold Art Maker in the chat, what's up, Cold Art Maker? I'm sure I'm gonna get his picks here in a second, but I think he was already picking. I think he picked Holloway before, but I'm sure he'll tell us here in a minute for this weekend coming up. But Smotherman was able to, you know, put it on Hadley and gets a unanimous decision win there. And unfortunately for Jake Hadley, he was cut by the UFC after this. He's no longer in the UFC. I mean, he was 1-3 in his last 4 fights. So, I mean, it's not like he lost 3 in a row, but I just don't think they were happy with his performances. So he gets that unanimous decision loss on that one and is no longer in the UFC. Holloway by head kick, TKO. Man, I fucking hope that would be great. I would love to see that. Not that I hate Topuria, but I do like Max Holloway a lot, and I'd love to see him get that belt back so we can watch him walk around with that title and the BMF title. That would be sick. But moving on to the next fight here from last week, Sumadarji versus Charles Johnson. Cold Art Maker, who do you got for Chimaev versus Whittaker? That's going to be a damn good fight. I'm going to guess you're going to say Chimaev, but I want to hear what your prediction is for that one. But we have Sumadarji versus Charles Johnson in the flyweight division. Another unanimous decision win. Sumadarji got some hits in, as you can see, but Charles Johnson comes out victorious in this one. Unanimous decision win for him in the flyweight division. And that brings us to the co-main event of UFC Vegas 99. And we have Kyler Phillips versus Rob Font. This fight was pretty good. I mean, these guys go at it. Smaller guys in the bantamweight division. You know, they're fast. They can hit hard. And, you know, it can be entertaining. But it was another unanimous decision finish here, or ending to this fight. And Rob Font got the win. But Kyler Phillips got some in on Font and was able to, you know, at least put up a fight. But Phillips didn't look like himself. He's usually really good on the ground, but a lot of people were thinking if it went to the ground that Rob Font wouldn't be able to handle that or get out of it, and that Phillips would have his way with him down there. But instead, he was able to get out and, you know, make his way to a unanimous decision win over Kyler Phillips. So that's it for the co-main, and that brings us to the main event. Anthony, what did I say? Did I say Anthony Hernandez? I think I did. Anthony Fluffy Hernandez versus Michel Pereira. The only other finish in this on this card, and it was a TKO in the 5th round, so it almost went all 5 rounds. So we're thinking another decision win here by the end of this one. But here's the thing I said, Anthony Hernandez always finds a way to get in trouble, and he makes a mistake and it leads to, you know, a possible loss for him. And it looked like for a while that might be what's happening. He got hurt in the first round by a body shot by Michel Pereira, and it didn't look good for him because he got hurt bad with that body shot, but he was able to recover and come back and then start putting in work against Pereira. As you can see here, landing some good punches, and then he gets this big takedown at the end of the fight and winds up getting in a dominant position and landing some big elbows on Michel Pereira, and gets the finish in the 5th round, 2 minutes and 22 seconds in. So that's a big win for Anthony Hernandez, especially Michel Pereira had a 8-fight winning streak, gets that snapped by Anthony Hernandez. A lot of people were high on Pereira, just talking about that big win streak. I mean, Hernandez was on like a 5-fight win streak. Now he, you know, gets up to 6. Let me double check that, but I'm pretty sure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep, he's on his 6th win in a row, and he snaps Pereira's 8-fight win streak. So I'm sure Pereira will be able to bounce back pretty quick. That's what he's done in the past after some losses. But as far as Anthony Hernandez, he's looking to, you know, step up in competition even further and, you know, continue on the way up to becoming a big contender. So, and he's definitely got, you know, he's got the capabilities of doing it on a 6-fight win streak now. Let's see if he can keep it going. We'll see who his next opponent is. But that wraps it up for UFC Vegas 99. We'll see what they have in store for UFC Vegas 100. I don't know if they're going to make it a big deal considering it's the 100th event in the Apex. Let me see if they even have... I don't know if they even have a card for that yet. The next fight night is Moreno versus Albazi, November 2nd. I don't know where that's taking place though. It's Aaron Blanchfield versus Rose Namajunas as well, and then Derek Lewis versus Jonata Deniz. Those are the only 3 fights on the card so far for the main card. Jasmine Jasdavicius versus Ariane Lipsky. Eamon Zahabi versus Pedro Munoz, and Charles Jourdain versus Victor Henry. So, I mean, those are some pretty good fights there for the next UFC fight night after 308. So I guess we'll see what that has in store. The one after that has some good fights on it as well, but none of it makes sense. We won't even talk about that because they have a woman fighting a man. And I don't think that's happening in the UFC. That's pretty funny. If you go look at Google UFC events right now, and then at, you know, you can see it'll probably bring up 308, and you can move down the way, go to UFC Fight Night Magny versus Prates. At the 3rd fight on the main card says Karolina Kovacevic versus, oh shit, my bad. I thought it said Dennis. It's Denise Gomes. So it is 2 women. Fuck, my bad. I did not mean to. All right, let's just move on from that one. You can go check that out yourself. But you'll see why I got mistaken. My bad. It's tough. Let's move on to what we all want to hear about. UFC 308 happening in Abu Dhabi, coming up this weekend. Big title fight in the featherweight division. Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway. Cold Art Maker says Holloway's going to win by head kick TKO. Man, just for Holloway to win would be great. That's what I'm looking for here. I have no hate towards Topuria. Holloway's just, man, he's a fan favorite. He's my favorite. He's one of my favorites. It's hard for me to go against Holloway. So he's just one of those guys I followed for a long time. I watched him fight Conor McGregor when they were both first coming up. Just continued to watch him because something about him, I think it's the way he talks or something, but it's just something that catches your attention with Max. And then just watching him fight too is entertaining. There's always something good with him, and then he's good on social media. He talks a good game, and it's funny to listen to him say the shit he says. You know, he's he says it is what it is, and at the end of the day, and all these other catchphrases that a lot of people say. I catch myself saying them a lot. But yeah, the way he says them is just one of the other reasons why a lot of people just like him. But he's a great fighter as well, and he's a former champion, defended his belt multiple times. He was a great champ, and now he's the BMF champion. He may have won that in the lightweight division. So his last fight was actually at 155, but that was a gigantic knockout over Justin Gaethje. We all remember that at UFC 300, a hell of a way to end off that card. And we're looking for a big knockout here. But either way, even if he doesn't get the knockout, I would just love to see Max Holloway win again, and win that belt again. So, but then we have another former champ in Robert Whittaker in the middleweight division versus Khamzat Chimaev, the very just injury prone, whether it's illnesses or injuries. Khamzat Chimaev has had to pull out of a lot of fights, and that's always a concern when he's fighting, and he just has those visa issues as well, where that precludes him from fighting in the US for a long time now. So I don't know if they'll ever clear that up, but he's undefeated, but it's hard to get him it's hard to think about him becoming a true contender and fighting for a belt when you don't even know if he's going to make it to the fight, much less be able to make it to the fight, like in person physically, because of his visa issues. Like, they can't just only have him defend his belt when they're overseas like that. I don't know that that's going to work, but something to think about there. But those are the two main fights on UFC 308. There's a lot of good fights on the undercard though. Starting at the bottom, we got Renat Fakhretdinov versus Carlos Miranda. Starting off the prelims, Ismail Nuradiev versus Bruno Silva. Farid Basharat versus Victor Hugo. Now, don't forget, this is happening in Abu Dhabi. You're gonna have a lot of fighters with names that are tough to pronounce, but I try my best. In the heavyweight division, we got Kennedy and Nzechukwu versus Chris Barnett. That should be a banger. Chris Barnett's always bringing the heat, and Nzechukwu is a pretty good fighter in his own right, so that should be a good one there. Abus Magomedov versus Bruno Ferreira, and then we got Mateusz Rebecki versus McTybeck Oralby, I believe. Jeff Neal versus former UFC champion Rafael Dos Anjos. They're fighting in the welterweight division. That should be a good one right there. And then Ibo Aslan versus Rafael I don't know how to say that name. But the interesting thing here is I see a lot of zeros in that in the loss column for most of these guys. Farad Basharat 12-0. We got Rafael Carquera, I think, is 11-0. Then we got in the main card, we have 1, 2, 3. So that's 5 guys that are undefeated on this card. That's crazy. And most of them have a last name that ends in a V. Like Shara Bullet, Magomedov, 14-0. Lerone Murphy, 14-0. Khamzat Chimaev, 13-0. So yeah, there's a lot of undefeated fighters on this card. So if you're betting, you might want to bet on those undefeated fighters, unless you want to go with the underdog and make some money. Take a chance on their opponent to break that undefeated record. You never know. That might be the way I go. I suck at betting though, so maybe don't listen to me. Again, I don't lose every fight that I pick. I just lose my parlays because I always pick at least one fight that doesn't go through. But that's okay. When I break that, I'm gonna break it big, and I'll deal with losing a lot to win a lot, I guess. I don't ever usually bet big money anyway, so it is what it is. And I just remembered right now that I completely forgot to make my picks, so I fucking failed. So I'll tell you guys as I go through the main card what fighters I pick for those fights. but I did not make a picks page because I suck. I don't know how I forgot that. The shitty part is I actually have to fix something now because I didn't make my picks and I had my picks as my last slide. So that sucks, but it's okay because that's an easy fix and I just did it. So there we go. But I will not have a picks page at the end like I normally do. I failed, but that's okay. So let's get into the main card here. We got who I mentioned a minute ago, Shara Magomedov, the pirate. They call him Shara Bullet. I don't know. He's got a bunch of nicknames apparently, but he only has one eye. So that is interesting because that keeps him from fighting in the US a lot. I don't know that they're not confirming nor denying whether he can fight in the US or not. But he hasn't yet to fight in the US. We've seen him at the PI. He's been in other fights, but he has not fought in the US. But he is 14-0 overall in the UFC. In MMA, in the UFC, he's 3-0. 11-0 by KO, TKO. No subs, wins or losses. And then he's 3-0 by decision. He's on a 3-fight win streak. Technically, it's a 14-fight win streak because, you know, he's 14-0, but he's only got 3 wins in the UFC. So we'll call that a 3-fight win streak in the UFC. He is fighting a very good opponent in Armen Petrosyan, though. And he's got potential to be able to give Magomedov a good fight because he has the tools to frustrate Magomedov in a way that he's been frustrated in his past fights, with the grappling and wrestling and stuff. You think Magomedov, you're thinking, oh, this guy's definitely one of those guys that will lay and pray, or at least be able to stack his weight on somebody and hold him down or against the cage, just like every other Magomedov of any sort. But he's more of a striker. He's got those crazy kicks. His hands aren't that great, but those kicks are deadly, and he's shown improved why those are good. But in the UFC, it hasn't been that big of a deal, but he has been winning. So that's something to look out for there. We'll see if Petrosyan can, you know, stifle him with his skills. Petrosyan's 33 years old, 8-3 in MMA, 3-2 in the UFC. So not a great record there, but I believe he's fought some really great fighters, especially with those losses. 5-1 in KO TKOs, 0-1 in submissions, and 3-1 by decision. He is coming off a loss. So let's take a look at some pictures of theirs, and let me tell you who Shara Bullet, his 3 wins in the UFC are over Bruno Silva and Antonio Tricali and Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. 2 of those are by decision. 1 is by TKO. That was against Tricali. His last win was a tough one against Oleksiejczuk. That's what I was talking about with him not looking the best, but still getting the win. Armen Petrosyan is coming off a loss to Rodolfo Vieira, but he's got wins over Christian Leroy Duncan, AJ Dobson, RoboCop Gregory Rodriguez. And his other loss, his 2 losses were against Vieira, like I said. Oh, and Kyle Baralio. So I mean, Kyle especially is one of those guys that's you can imagine why he lost that one. I mean, that was by decision. He lost to Vieira. That was his only submission loss to Vieira in the first round, arm triangle choke. So yeah, let's see what Petrosyan can do against the Pirate, Shara Bullet, and see if he can break that undefeated record. Let's move on to I got these out. They're out of order on that page. But Magomed Ankalaev versus Alexander Rakic. Now, Ankalaev was supposed to have probably been fighting for the light heavyweight championship against Alex Pereira. That's who everyone thought was going to be up next. But, you know, with the fighting style of Ankalaev, it's no surprise as to why they gave it to Khalil Roundtree. You know, when they made that Roundtree fight, though, they kind of already had this fight made. But the UFC's broken fights that have been set in stone already before and canceled them and used the bigger fighter for a different fight on a different card. So I don't know why they didn't do it. I think we all kind of do know why they didn't do it because it's not a good matchup for Pereira. But I think Pereira can probably handle a little more of the grappling and wrestling at this point, because he has advanced his skills a little more. We haven't seen him truly get tested like Ankalaev would test him, but I do think that Ankalaev would be a good matchup to show and prove that Pereira's the real deal. But it's scary for everybody to think about that, because if Pereira is not at that level yet, or even at the level to defend very well against it, there goes one of their only stars right now. And I think that's why the UFC is kind of holding back on that one. But if Ankalaev comes out big in this fight against Rakic, who's one of the bigger fighters in the division, then I think they're not going to be able to avoid it. So I guess this is a big fight to show and prove what could be done with these guys. And if Rakic gets a big win over Ankalaev, maybe he's next in line for that light heavyweight title. Something to think about there. So there's some big stuff going on with this fight. Ankalaev, though, is 19-1 overall, 10-1 in the UFC. Hasn't been KO'd or TKO'd, but he's got 10 wins there. 1-1 by sub, and 8. Is that 8-0? Yeah, 8-0 by decision. He's on a 10-fight win streak because he lost his debut fight in the UFC, and he hasn't lost since. So that's, I mean, he's on a 10-fight win streak. That would be why he should probably be in line for the title fight, and instead he's here fighting Alexander Rakic. But it is what it is, in the words of Max Holloway. Rakic is 32 years old, 14-4 overall, 6-3 in the UFC, 9-2 KO TKOs, 1-1 by sub. They got similar records there, so if it goes to the ground, you never know. 4-1 by decision, and he's on a 2-fight losing streak. So it's kind of weird. See, that's what I'm saying. Rakic has fought big name fighters though, but he's on a 2-fight losing streak fighting a guy who's on a 10-fight winning streak. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, right? I don't know. I guess the UFC's just I don't know. I don't know what to, I don't really know what to say about that one. But anyway, we got these guys matching up here, and they both have striking, but again, Ankalaev has got the really good wrestling and grappling. He's coming off a win over Johnny Walker in the last one. He did have a draw against Jan Blachowicz, which they were fighting for the vacant title at that point, I think, before Pereira got the title. He had a no contest in there as well against Johnny Walker for an illegal knee. So, you know, it's a 10-0 record with kind of an asterisk, because he's got a no contest in there and then a draw. But either way, he has wins over Anthony Smith, Thiago Santos, Volkan Ozdemir, Nikita Krylov, Ian Cutelaba twice, Marcin Prachnio. I mean, he's got a lot of pretty good names in his record. 10-fight win streak. And let's see. There's a few decisions in there, a few KO TKOs, and no submissions. Yeah. But I mean, so this could be a very good stand-up fight if Ankalaev doesn't take it to the ground. But let's check out the last 2 fights for Rakic that he lost was against Yuri Prohaska and Jan Blachowicz. Again, 2 former champions. Jan, I think, was just an interim, wasn't he? Or was he the full champ? I don't even remember at this point. If he was, maybe he just fought for the title. I can't even remember now. Either way, those were both TKO losses. And with Ankalaev having so many KO TKO wins, you know, if Rakic keeps up on this streak, that would not be good for him to lose 3 times in a row by a TKO stoppage. That might put him in a bad way. But if he gets a big win over Ankalaev, they could put up a good, you know, argument as to why he should be next to fight Alex Pereira. And that would be a better fight for Pereira, honestly, over Ankalaev. But his last 2 wins were over Thiago Santos and Anthony Smith. He has a loss against Volkan Ozdemir, and then a win against Jimmy Manawa. So he's fought some big names. He was highly touted there for a little while. A lot of decisions in there, but it's either decision or KO TKO. So again, this could become a pretty big, exciting fight. I think we're going to get a lot more finishes on this card than we have in the recent past, especially with these with these fight night cards that we've had recently, and that last one especially, with so many goddamn decisions. But let's move on to Lerone Murphy versus Dan Ige in the featherweight division. Lerone Murphy is 33 years old, 14-0 overall, 6-0 in the UFC, 7-0 by KO TKO, no subs at all, wins or losses, 7-0 by decision. And again, he's on a 6-fight winning streak in the UFC, but he's actually on a 14-fight winning streak overall. And then he's fighting Dan Ige, 50K Ige, who, you know, stepped in on his last fight within hours of the fight, weighed in and fought a great fight against Diego Lopez, almost getting the win actually, and definitely got a bonus, I believe. That's why they call him 50K Ige, but put up a damn good fight, almost got the win, and against a tough opponent like Diego Lopez. So he's definitely looking to come in and redeem himself here against Lerone Murphy with that undefeated record. It's going to be a tough feat, but, you know, Ige's got a lot of confidence, and, you know, we've seen him do a lot of big things. So this could be his way to get back in that win column in a big way and break an undefeated record. So let's check out Lerone Murphy. If I can find my spot. I don't know how I lost my spot. Oh, there we go. Shit. So yeah, there's that pic of him hitting Diego Lopez in his last fight, and you got Lerone Murphy with that big kick. But let's see. Lerone Murphy's last opponents were Joshua Kulibau, Edson Barbosa, Gabriel Santos, Makwan Amirkhani, Douglas Silva de Andrade, Ricardo Ramos. And then his first fight was a draw, actually. So he does have a draw in there. But it looks like it's a combination of decisions and KO TKOs. His last 3 fights were won by decision, though. 2 unanimous and 1 split. So there's always that chance that we get a decision fight here. But with Dan Ige fighting, it's definitely going to be interesting and exciting. Dan Ige's hardly ever involved in a boring fight. So that's something good and to look forward to. Like I said, against Diego Lopez was his last fight that he got a loss. It was a unanimous decision loss for him, but it was a good fight still. His last win was over Andre Fili. Before that, lost to Bryce Mitchell. His win was by KO over Andre Fili, though. Had a win over Nate Landwehr and Damon Jackson. Decision and KO there. That win against Damon Jackson was intense. Very, very big knockout for him in that one. He's also fought Movsar Evloev, Josh Emmett, Chan Sung Jung, and Kelvin Cater, Edson Barbosa, Mirsad Bektik. So he's fought a lot of big names, wins and losses over a lot of them. So, I mean, he's definitely one of those fighters that is a game opponent for Lerone Murphy, who's trying to keep his undefeated record. And we'll see if that is a thing that actually happens, or if Dan Ige can break it and get back in that win column. So moving on to the co-main event, we have Bobby Knuckles, Robert Whittaker versus Khamzat Chimaev. The Wolf Boars Khamzat Chimaev. Khamzat, another undefeated fighter, but Robert Whittaker being a former champion and who looked really good in his last fight against Ikram Alaskarov. He's on a 2-fight win streak, but he's 26-7 overall, 17-5 in the UFC, 10-3 by KO TKO, 5-1 by submission, 11-3 by decision. Again on a 2-fight win streak for Whittaker. And you got Khamzat Chimaev, 13-0 overall, 7-0 in the UFC, 5 of those by KO TKO, 6 by submission, and 2 by decision. Of course, no losses in any of those categories because he is undefeated. I mean, technically he's 13 on a 13-fight win streak, but only 7 of those are in the UFC, so I just counted those. Well, we got Bobby Knuckles, you know, with the great striking. He's definitely known for his striking, but he's got good pressure all the way around. He does keep that lead hand a little low, which could be problematic coming against Khamzat Chimaev, who can catch you with some good shots And if you leave that open for him and don't get the head movement or you know, footwork behind it, could be bad news for Whittaker. We've seen him get caught before, like he did against DDP. So those are some things to think about in the negative aspect for Robert Whittaker, but he's also very good with the pressure, very good with his striking. You know, he's pretty accurate, and as long as he doesn't get too frustrated or discouraged, he's definitely going to press forward and, you know, put a barrage of strikes on you and hopefully land some. I'd like to see him get another big win. Again, he's on a 2-fight winning streak with wins over Paulo Costa and Ikram Aliskerov. These 2 fights here. His last loss was to Dricus du Plessis last year. That's what got Dricus the title fight that he wound up winning. That made him the champ. Whittaker's fought all the big names because he was a champ for so long. He fought Marvin Vettori, lost to Israel Adesanya. He's fought Kelvin Gastelum, Jared Cannonier, Darren Till, Izzy again, Yoel Romero twice, Jacare, Derek Brunson, Rafael Natal, Uriah Hall, Brad Tavares, all kinds of big names. So the strength of schedule on Robert Whittaker is insane. And you know, he's got the big fights against Izzy, but Izzy's always had his number. And Dricus has also beat him as well. He lost to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson and Court McGee a while back too. But, you know, again, he was a champ for a long time and a great champ at that. And I do like Robert Whittaker a lot. So it's tough for me to bet against him. But Khamzat Chimaev is one of those guys that when he is healthy, he's a damn good fighter. And you know you're going to get a lot of things coming from him, whether it be striking, grappling, wrestling, submissions. I mean, as you can see here, he's great with the submissions, whether he's threatening with them or actually sinking them in. His last win was over Kamaru Usman, where he almost submitted him, as you can see on that top picture, but that was a majority decision win for Khamzat. Had a submission over Kevin Holland, which you see down at the bottom there. And then man, he's fought Gilbert Burns. That was a tough fight for him. Gilbert Burns actually gave him a really, really tough fight, and he almost looked human in that one. Unanimous decision win for him, though, over Gilbert Burns as well. He beat the Leech, Jing Liang, by submission. There's a big punch there against Gilbert Burns. He's also beat Gerald Mearshart by KO. That was a big KO for him. Rise McKee by TKO. So again, I mean, he's beat Ikram Aliskerov as well by KO, but and that wasn't even in the UFC. That was in Brave. Damn, that was a while back. But either way, you know, he's got that undefeated record, but Robert Whittaker's strength of schedule's insane compared to his. But he has fought and won against some big names, so you got to give him credit. And if, like I said, if he's healthy and ready and makes it to the fight, I mean, you're definitely going to get a great fight out of this one. I think as long as Robert Whittaker is good to go in this fight, and you know, Chimaev makes it there, they're both, as long as nothing crazy happens right away, I feel like it's going to be a hard fought win for one of these guys. And I would love to see Robert Whittaker come out on top. I feel bad for Chimaev with the fact that, you know, he has all the illnesses and the injuries and stuff, but Robert Whittaker, if that's his opponent, that's who I have to go for. So I'm going for Robert Whittaker in that one. And then that takes us to the main event, Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway for the featherweight championship. Max Holloway's the current BMF champion. The belt is not on the line because he won the belt in the lightweight division. I don't know if that really matters, but they said right away off the bat that this was not a two belt championship, that both belts were not up for grabs. It's just a featherweight championship. That's the division that Max Holloway won his championship in before. He's just been fighting up at lightweight here and there, and that's where he fought for the BMF title that he won against Justin Gaethje. That was his last fight. But yeah, these two are matched up here. Topuria, again, another undefeated fighter. I forgot to even mention him earlier when I was listing all the undefeated fighters. But he is 15-0 overall in MMA, 7-0 in the UFC, 5-0 by KO TKO, 8 submission wins, 2 decisions. He's on that 7-fight win streak in the UFC, but 15 overall. And then you got Max Holloway, 26-7 in MMA, 22-7 in the UFC, 12-0 by KO TKO. He has not been KO'd or TKO'd whatsoever in any fight, much less been knocked down. There's one questionable, I think, against Dustin Poirier, where he kind of fell against the cage and did not make it to the ground. A lot of people say that should have been counted as a knockdown, that the cage saved him. But you know what? He didn't fucking go to the ground, and he wouldn't even have stayed there if he did make it to the ground. So fuck all that noise. Max Holloway's not even been knocked down in a fight yet, much less knocked out or TKO'd. So that's a tough one to overcome for Topuria, who's used to just knocking people out, basically. It's going to be a tough one with Max because he's got a chin. And even though it looked like he fell off a little bit after losing the title, he's still one of the baddest motherfuckers in the world because, I mean, he literally holds the title for beating the BMF. Even though it was a higher weight class. That's the only thing I worry about here. Max Holloway going back down to 145. That could be a big factor in this, considering Topuria is the current champ, has been fighting in nothing but the 145 division, used to that weight cut, all that. Max looked like he was struggling with his weight cuts in the past few fights that he had in 145 division. But, again, to quote Max, it is what it is. He's gonna come out ready to go. So he's looking to get his title back in the featherweight division so he can put both those belts over his shoulders and be the BMF as well. It's almost like being a double champ because he won the BMF title in the lightweight division. So it's going to be crazy. I feel like this is going to be a great fight. If it ends early, I hope it's because Max ends it early. But I feel like in all reality, if it ends early, it's going to be because Topuria, catches Max. Max is kind of a slow starter. Topuria is talking about pointing to the center of the cage first thing and trying to go at it. He's trying to bait Max into that back and forth war at the beginning of the fight. And that's just not a thing, Max has always done it when it's the last 10 seconds of the last round because it's like, hey, let's throw it all on the line right here. He didn't have to do that against Justin Gaethje. He's winning that fight by a fucking mile. He was dominating that fight after he kicked Justin Gaethje in the chin with that weird spinning back kick that he did at the end of the first round. Gaethje was rocked and rattled and never fully recovered, really. He came back and still had a great fight with Max, but Max was on top that whole fight, especially after that. And so, he challenges Gaethje to the center of the cage, points to the ground, and they go at it. And he winds up doing the iconic shit, like catching Gaethje in the last seconds of the fight, knocks him out cold to become the BMF champ. I mean, that's some fucking gangster shit right there. So fucking Max, man, he's a badass. And I don't, as long as he doesn't have too bad of a weight cut and he's feeling good, I think this is going to be a great fight. I think it needs to go to, past like 2.5 rounds for Max to fully wake up and be ready. I hate guys that are slow starters. It sucks because it's just scary, especially against guys who want to go in there and end it early. Like Topuria's like, I'm down, let's do it. So he's going to be, searching for that chin, but maybe that'll make him vulnerable. Maybe Holloway can wear him out a little bit. Holloway's been like, every time he says it, he's like, nah, man, that's not what I do. We do that shit at the end of the fight when it's time to throw down. Before that, you better hope that you can beat me. That's just how it goes. So how is that going to go down? I don't know. But it's going to be fun to watch and see. And I think this is going to be I can almost guarantee this will be the fight of the night unless some crazy shit happens in the bottom. I mean, Whittaker and Chimaev have equally the amount of opportunity to win that as well, but that one, it's tough because Chimaev is a little more dominant than Topuria is. I guess Chimaev is more of a danger or more of a threat to Whittaker than Topuria is to Holloway. And this is just my opinion. So I think that it's going to definitely go longer for the main event than it will the co-main, I think. And if it does go longer for the co-main, that's going to be an advantage for Whittaker, which I didn't mention before, but I am going for Whittaker in that fight. And in this one, I'm going for Max Holloway, if you couldn't tell already. But it's going to be interesting and it's going to be fun. You know, you got the champ, the current champ, with these big punches against why'd I just fucking space on his name? God damn it. Josh Emmett. It took me a minute. But of course, Topuria won the belt by beating Alexander Volkanovski in his last fight by KO, which was tough to watch too. But has that big punch there against Josh Emmett, but it beat him by unanimous decision. Submission over Bryce Mitchell. KO by punches against Jai Herbert, which you see there as well. And then another big KO over Ryan Hall. That one was crazy. You see Bryce Mitchell up top there, and unfortunately Volkanovski at the bottom. He had a big win against Damon Jackson as well, who we talked about earlier. So yeah, I mean, Topuria has definitely got the striking, and yeah, let's see, he's got those 5-0. He's never been knocked out himself. So I mean, that's a crazy chance to take there. Guessing a knockout in this one or a TKO, because neither one of these guys has lost that way at all, and obviously Topuria hasn't lost at all. So yeah, this is a tough one to call. I'm definitely going for Max though, and this is why. I mean, it's just hard to. I mean, Kelvin Kattar, you know, he's got that big knee there, but that wasn't even the story of that fight. The story of that fight was him screaming over to the commentary booth about how he's the best boxer in the UFC. No one can touch him, and he's dodging punches while not even looking that Kattar's throwing at him. You know, he's barely getting grazed, and he's talking to the commentary booth. It was nuts. So that was a crazy fight with Kelvin Kattar. And then you know, he has that big punch against Yair there. Again, the big elbow with Arnold Allen. That was a hell of a fight. Happened not too long ago, I think. Yeah, that was April last year. He had that crazy fight with the Korean Zombie when the Korean Zombie retired. So that was an emotional night. I mean, he got the KO over him. His last two fights were KO wins. One in the third round, one in the fifth round. So again, it goes to deep waters, and Max Holloway has the advantage because he can finish fights in the last round, in the last seconds of the last round even. I mean, the KO against the Korean Zombie was 23 seconds left, or 23 seconds into the third round, and the KO punch over Justin Gaethje for UFC 300 was at 4:59 of the fifth round. We're talking down to the last fucking second. So that's what I'm saying. I mean, he does have a lot of decisions on his record, but it's always a great fight with Max Holloway. And you know, if it gets there, he's gonna point to the damn ground, and I'm hoping that he gets the walk-off like he did against Gaethje over Topuria, if it gets to that point. And I hope it does, because that would be some badass shit to do that twice in a row. I mean, I would prefer he wins a little sooner, but if he gets it to the end like that, points to the ground and Topuria obliges, then I feel like Max is definitely coming out of that one the winner, like he has in the past. So let's hope for the good shit for Max Holloway. Good luck to him. Again, if we go over the card, my picks for the main card, I didn't make a sheet, unfortunately, because I'm a dumbass. I got caught up a little bit. So Shara Bullet versus Armen Petrosyan. I think Armen has a really good chance at making that a good fight, like I said, and has a good chance at winning, but I'm gonna have to go with Shara Bullet there to continue being undefeated. There's just something about him fighting overseas that he just doesn't fail. So Lerone Murphy versus Dan Ige. I'm gonna go ahead and go with Dan Ige to break that undefeated record of Lerone Murphy. I think Dan Ige's hungry for a big win, especially after the way the last fight went for him against Diego Lopez. Magomed Ankalaev versus Alexander Rakic. I feel like Ankalaev's got that in the bag, unless Rakic can catch him early. But I don't know. I feel like Ankalaev's going to be the winner there. Whittaker versus Chimaev. If it ends early, it's Chimaev for sure. But I want Robert Whittaker to, survive those first couple rounds and put the pressure on and do what he does to get a big win over Chimaev and break that undefeated record as well. For the co-main, and then in the main event, again, Max Holloway. I'm looking for that big win for Max to regain his title that he had a while back, become a 2 title holder, 1 BMF and the featherweight championship of the world, to break the undefeated record of Ilia Topuria as well. I'm hoping it goes a little deeper in the rounds. We see a good fight, and Max usually can suffer some damage, and he has a good chin, so he's never been knocked out, and I hope this is not the first time we see him get knocked out. But I'm hoping for a big win against Holloway. Fuck everything else. That's my biggest takeaway here is Max Holloway for the win. I want to see it happen. The Blessed Express. Let's do it again. And that does it for UFC 308. And that does it for me. What do we got? Every Thursday, come back next week and we'll recap UFC 308. No watch party. I've been doing watch parties for every UFC pay-per-view. This is the second one this month, and it's happening during the day. I think I'm doing some tailgating for some football. I kind of had already said I would do that. And I had a lot of trouble on the last watch party. I kind of wanted to test it out this week, but it just doesn't work with the scheduling and stuff. If it was at night, I'd probably do it, but I'm going to skip it this time. I'll be watching though. I buy every fight regardless, and shit, I'll watch it on my phone. If I have to, but I'm probably going to take a tablet or something with me so I have a little bit bigger screen to watch it on. And who knows, maybe I'll pop up live somewhere, whether here on YouTube. So don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can see if I do a little, remote location pop-up podcast reacting to the fights in real time. That might be something I do, because I do have these fancy new little microphones, wireless microphones. Infinity got these as well, so he's been playing with them. Oh shit. But yeah, I got those on a very good deal, and they're pretty dope. So I'm looking to, look like a goddamn real content creator and use those mics, possibly go live while I'm out at tailgating, but we'll see what happens. I don't know. Got to play it by ear. Don't forget to hit the notification bell, and you'll know if I wind up going live. That's the best way to know. Otherwise, I'll see you next Thursday for a recap of everything, and let's hope for the best with Max Holloway and everyone else I'm going for. I'll put in a bet, at least one bet, but I'm thinking about doing some like small parlays, or maybe one parlay, not a full card parlay, maybe one parlay, and I'll do some single money line bets or something. That might be something I do. Just change it up a little bit. Either way, I'll give you an update on how that goes and who I bet on coming up next week, and we'll talk about the next fight night card, and of course go over everything here and any other combat sports news that pops up in between. So enjoy the fights. Don't forget, UFC's in Abu Dhabi, so it'll be an early start time. Google UFC events, go to UFC 308. It'll tell you at the top what time the main card will be in your area. It's going to be 12 p.m. noon for me, the start of the main card, which means the prelims will be early, like 9 a.m. I think, or 8 a.m., something like that. So yeah, if you think you're going to watch later on in the night, you're not going to. So be aware. Don't say I didn't tell you. So don't forget. Enjoy the fights. Enjoy your weekend. Take it easy. Be safe. I'm out of here. Peace.